Hey!
Hey!
We're back.
Yeah, we are. It's been a minute.
Yeah, podcast episode 2.
Episode 2.
We've almost decided upon a name.
We are so close.
And by the time that you are watching this or listening to it, we will have a name.
Hopefully.
We can hope.
Hopefully. We've got a very strong contender. We're just working out the legality of it, and because we don't want to steal anything, you know?
Yeah, and we don't want to, encroach on people's territory.
Yeah, totally.
Or have a goofy name.
Or have a ridiculous name. But thank you all for your recommendations and suggestions. A lot of really good ones.
Really great ones,
Some horrible ones, too.
Just like we're going to be canceled instantly.
Yeah, the Tones E. Danza. Whoever did that, thank you, but no thanks. We're good. We're good. So, as we mentioned in podcast number 1, our goal here is to bring intermediate guitar players to the next level. And we're going to cover a lot of different subjects. And so this is not another gear podcast. This is about becoming a better musician and a better guitar player and a better bandmate.
Absolutely.
And so this week we're going to be talking about open mics and jam sessions. So what are you thinking about let's first of all identify the difference or maybe the importance of an open mic, either jam session. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. So, I think it's really important. Daniel and I have worked with a lot of different types of students, and the reality is, at some point in your development, you get to a place where you either want to build community with other people, other musicians, or you want to go and test yourself and really put yourself, in a place that's a little bit anxious, a little bit challenging.
Yep.
And you want to see if those things that you've been working on in the bedroom or whatever by yourself are actually going to apply to real life and real time.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was 17, I started playing open mics, and it was really awesome. And it led to some really great friendships and some really incredible opportunities. For instance, I just showed up being 17 and with a very limited repertoire of songs. And about a year later, the guy who owned the establishment actually asked me to lead the jams, because I was regular. I knew the tunes. I always had my gear and I was professional. And so that was really awesome to start out so young, and then by 18 having the experience to where you're kind of the ringleader.
Yeah, you're already playing a ton. Yeah, that's cool. I started, I think I started playing when I was 13, and so, probably 15-ish, I started playing out at open mics and jam sessions, and it was like a major, challenge. I didn't lead any, jam sessions or anything until way later, but, yeah.
For sure. And, this most likely for intermediate guitar players will be their first time performing outside of their home, or maybe a party with their friends, so it can be extremely nerve-wracking, but it definitely is worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I personally went into it having no idea what was going on, and it showed. It was very, very apparent, but thankfully there were some guys there who were able to kind of take me under their wing and help me out. And so this is what we want to do. We want to kind of pass along our knowledge to you. And so hopefully you won't make the same mistakes at least I made.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we were kind of discussing, and there are open mics and there are jam sessions. And in my experience, basically, an open mic would be typically for someone like a singer-songwriter or someone who's coming to play and sing. Now, it might be a crew of people. Like I have a couple students right now. One of them's the singer and plays acoustic guitar. The other one's kind of playing lead with them. And sometimes you might have that same situation where it's a whole band, and you get to play a few songs or whatever as a whole entity, but it's like you have your chunk of time, and that's it. Now, a jam session, in my experience, is where there's a band that would be considered the house band, and this house band, typically a lot of times in the first set would play by themselves.
Yep.
And then they would invite other people to come up and play with them on the second set and for the remainder of the gig.
Yeah, and both of those involve a sign-up sheet.
Totally, yeah, a lot of times.
And I find it. I've always recommended to my students and friends who are going to a new situation just observe first. Just
Yeah.
get there early and just try to meet people. Again, just be cool, be relaxed, be friendly. No ego. Just meet everyone you can. Tell people who you are, what you do, what you'd like to do. If it's twice a week jam or once a week, to say, hey, I'd like to come back this time next week, and even get their opinion on what to bring. Because they can tell you if the house gear is good or not, and then they can also just let you know, like, hey, you might want to need. To bring a higher powered amp, the amp here is just kind of weak.
Totally. Yeah, getting some kind of rapport with the band. And also, like, the other thing is, a lot of times musicians can have a bit of an ego. And so if you go in, just be really nice to the band, to the house band, make friends, like, sit down. Don't even try to sit in at first. Just enjoy the set. Notice the way that people are communicating, the way that, the stage rapport is, who's the band leader, all these things can become clear when you're not in a rush just to get your kicks off.
Sure.
Going to, to play as many notes as you can.
Right, and then you can see in that second set where they do invite people up, you can kind of see the flow of how things are going. Do they kind of turn the reins over, or is it just like, okay, let's do this song, who calls the tune, who calls the key, or the tempo. So again, every jam situation is different.
Absolutely.
And I think what Daniel said about just having no ego, just be a great supporter and listener. And then next week show up, and let's talk about gear. So
yeah, sure. That sounds good.
What is your what's your kind of go-to package for when you have an open mic versus a jam set?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times in my experience, the open mic, you go to, say, a coffee house or a restaurant or a music venue on an off night potentially,
right.
Or smaller part of a music venue or whatever. And they'll have some kind of PA with a vocal mic. And a lot of times they don't have any guitar amps in my experience, especially in that situation, because they might expect like singer-songwriter situation, some people just, coming in with their acoustic guitars and they're going to play and sing songs, right? So they don't necessarily always have an amp available in my experience.
Correct. Yeah. And when you do bring an amp, be reasonable in what you bring. There's no reason to bring, a Mesa triple rec head and a 4x12
or two of them.
Right. This is not show off or Halloween or like a costume party. Just get something that a Blues Junior. It's a great $270 amp, or just something that's flexible and something that, if it gets broken, it's not going to be the end of the world, and it just sounds okay. It doesn't have to sound amazing, but
it really doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as long as it sounds loud enough and you have a comfortable level of headroom that you want, and you're not blowing anyone out. That's very important.
For sure. I mean, for years I used a 74 Fender Vibrochamp, the silver face.
Yeah.
And I mean, it weighed, 16 pounds. It had 3 tubes in the back, and it sounded great, and it was easy, and it had 2 knobs up and a switch. So that
brings up a really funny point. And as guitar players, we are terrible about this. Please don't bring your brand new pedal that you don't know how to use. Don't bring any gear that you don't know how to use. Yeah, I'm guilty of this too. I definitely have brought pedals that I received that day to the gig, but if I didn't know how to work it, I wasn't going to step on it. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the brand new pedal board that you wire that you're really excited to show off, test it before you bring it. Because man, Murphy's Law. It's something's going to go wrong, and being on stage, is just not the place to fix anything.
Absolutely. And no solderless cables.
Oh my gosh.
Just a personal experience.
Amen. Absolutely.
So then potentially on more of like a jam session, there might be a drummer. And sometimes, this is why you go in advance and you go and check it out, because is that drummer loud? Are they really, sensitive to volume? Do you actually need to bring a pretty decent sized 112?
Sure. Yeah.
Because that in that situation, a lot of times you're not going to be miking cabs up in like the kind of run and gun kind of way that open mics and jam sessions work.
Yeah, for sure. And normally there's not a monitor mix, you
Yeah,
know,
or it's not good.
right, or if it is, it's being run by someone who has no business running sounds. So, someone's uncle that once saw Jefferson Airplane in 1971 or something, and thinks that they're
And stood kind of close to the monitor board.
right, and is still living through that in his brain somehow.
I saw those knobs move. I know how to do this.
Yeah,
You just push them up, right?
So talking about gear, a lot of people, especially guitar players, are very apprehensive about sharing their gear.
Yes, that is for
and
sure.
that is fine, but it is not rude for someone to ask you if they can play your guitar or your amp, because it is a community. The thing that you have to remember is that you need to treat your gear as if, you need to treat anyone else's gear as if it were your own,
totally.
And you need to make sure that that is understood before you hand your guitar to anyone else.
Absolutely.
I swear to you that this happened. I had a guy come up, it was dark, and he was like, "Do you mind if I play your guitar?" I was like, "Yeah, no problem." So he gets it, and then I see him on stage, and he's got this orange residue all over his right hand. And I'm like, "What is that?" The dude had been eating Cheetos. His fingers were yellow. Like, it's so crazy. And so I got my guitar back, and it's just caked in Cheetos dust. And needless to say, I never let that guy touch any of my guitars or anything like that
And that
again.
is okay. You're allowed to tell them no from then on.
Exactly. Any horror stories on your end?
Oh, absolutely. So this was not a jam session, but an important experience that I had. Yeah, so I think I was on a gig in Wilmington. Daniel Klein used to live in Wilmington. Great town.
Glad I don't live there anymore.
It was that gypsy place that was also a hookah bar. Anyway, it was, kind of divey. And I guess the guy, broke some strings, or at least a couple, on his guitar. And he was like, "Hey, man, can I play your guitar for my set?" And I was like, "Oh, man, sure." No one would assume that this would happen. And all of a sudden, dude is just pounding on my guitar and just, loses some kind of, hangnail or something on his finger. And blood is just all over the top of my guitar. I kid you not, I sold that guitar many years later, and I could still see spots of blood inside the guitar.
Yeah.
Maybe that's bad on my part, but
Well, these are the situations that you're going to find yourself in, and that's where having a good sense of humor and not being overly serious comes in hand, because these things do happen. Just watch out for Cheeto wrappers or anything like
and
that.
people who look like they have a blood.
Right. Any open wounds, just, you might even ask that. Do you eat Cheetos? No. Do you have any open wounds? No. You're good to go.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
You can play my guitar.
Another thing that I need to stress, if you do have a beverage, keep it off the stage.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially when people are shuffling around.
It is a recipe for disaster, and I've literally seen disasters happen where, someone's got a draft beer, and they set it up on top of this matchless chieftain.
Don't ever put a beer on an amp. That's
Whether it's yours or not, don't do it.
at home,
Nope.
anywhere. Here, no.
Yeah. And house gear, if it's a PA, if it's a speaker, anything, treat that gear as if it's your own.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to take care of the stuff.
Yeah. So just really be cautious. Personally, at my home, I don't allow anything without a lid near my gear.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if it does spill, nothing comes out.
Yeah, totally.
So just be careful. And, as it gets later in the night, we've all had open mic or jam sets that go 3-4 hours, when it's 1:45 and people have had a number of beverages, they get real sloppy and people tend to trip, and just, you got to make sure that, you just got to take care of your gear, take care of everybody else's gear.
Yeah. And, in my experience, a lot of times people will bring their own guitars, But if somebody is intoxicated and, you wavering around with your guitar in their hand, you can take it away from
Absolutely.
them. That's okay.
Yeah. I don't see anyone being upset about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's talk about the different kind of tunes, open mic versus jam session.
Sure, yeah. In my experience, at open mics, basically, People will come up. They might have 2 or 3 songs that they have prepped that they're ready to play. And since they aren't playing with a band typically or other people, they can just kind of jam and play by themselves. And again, that's like that one niche of singer-songwriter, cover, vocal, acoustic guitar kind of realm. That's one style of open mics.
Yeah. And as far as etiquette goes, I've seen people have their 2 or 3 songs ready to go. They get on the list, they sign up, and some person comes up and says, "Hey, can I sit in with you?"
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can say yes or you can say no, because I've seen people murder other people's songs because they haven't even heard it. They're just wanting to jam over someone's open mic, and that's not the type of session it is.
Totally. You're allowed to say, well, these songs have some wacky chord changes. Maybe we could work something up later on the next week or whatever.
Right.
That's
no
totally reasonable.
Reason to be rude, but you also do have your time is your time, and you can be protective of it. But I've seen people try to encroach on that and almost kind of steal it.
Yeah.
And that's very parasitical.
That's a no-no. And if you're that parasitical person, bad. Shame.
Yeah.
Don't
shame
do
on
that.
you. Don't do that.
Bad. No.
Don't do that.
But at a jam session specifically.
Jam sessions, I would say there's probably 15 to 20 like songs that most jam bands, kind of there's that lexicon, that you can
stylistically, of course.
Right. There's blues jams, there's jazz jams,
and then more of like kind of top 40. Like a top 40, you could be safe if you know a lot of like the wedding repertoire. You'd probably be solid. Like
totally
the classic Stevie Wonder tunes that everybody plays.
Absolutely.
Use Me, Bill Withers, Ain't No Sunshine.
Of course,
there's kind of a classic list of that kind of stuff.
Right. Where in like blues, it'd be like The Sky Is Crying or
Pride and Joy.
Or The Thrill Is Gone.
Mustang Sally.
Right. I don't ever want to play that song again. But it would be good to familiarize yourself with those tunes, or at least have something to offer.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's again why we recommend go a week in advance. Write down the songs that the band's playing. These are classic tunes that a lot of the open mics are gonna do or jam sessions are gonna do. Know the songs, practice them at home, make sure you're prepped, and then go to the gig. Don't just try and jump in on stuff that you don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of don't know and jazz gigs, jazz open mics, which I will totally acquiesce to you. You've got more of these under your belt. What is the appropriate behavior or process for like bringing charts or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so a lot of times there's this thing called the Real Book, if you guys don't know, that basically in the 70s at Berkeley, all these people transcribed all these jazz tunes, and they become kind of the standard. And it's like 500 songs deep, right? Well, over the years, it's gotten better and better, and now it's pretty clean and clear, and you can work out of that. So, a lot of times what you would do, again, just like in the pop or blues thing, is you go see what kind of tunes they're playing. Like, don't call the silliest, goofiest, easiest song. Don't call the insanely hardest song, There's nothing to prove. You just want to make music with the community, right? So in the past, what I've done is just kind of like check in with the band leader, figure out, maybe if I've been practicing and working on a few different things, I'll like have 5 tunes that I could sit in on. Mm-hmm. Maybe my repertoire's larger than that. Maybe it's smaller. And you kind of chat with the band leader and say, hey, is that cool? Do you guys know these tunes? And, if it's pretty clear when something's like really in the repertoire where mostly anywhere you go in the world, people would know that tune.
Correct.
Versus like some like little niche, like this one version of the song that Frank Sinatra did in like Germany in 19 whatever,
Right.
It's like you don't want to be, you can't be that specific. You can be like, oh yeah, can we play it in this key?
Right.
And
even then, like, don't go crazy,
not
like,
super crazy keys.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you're a vocalist, because we all expect that.
We might need to cut that out. But also with the jam situation, regardless of the genre, realize that these performances are more of an outline than anything. It's not going to be the exact rendition of a particular version of a song.
Totally. When you're calling a song on the jam session, you are not calling the record version that you've been listening to.
And if
your
you
entire
expect
life.
that, you are going to be surprised and thrown off, and you're going to wonder, why is the song continuing to go? it should have cut off at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Now we're at 8 minutes.
Exactly.
You know?
Why are we playing this song 8 beats per minute slower or 15 beats per minute faster? Wait, why is the drummer doing that fill there? I'm not used to that.
Right.
Flexibility is like key.
Yeah, and to do that, to be flexible, you have to listen.
Yeah,
you know?
that is such an important part of it.
So don't just get on stage and just jump in, you know?
Right.
Make sure, well, first of all, I think the most important thing is tune your guitar before you get to the stage.
Clip-on tuners are
Yes.
so easy. The Polytune, highly recommend that one.
Right. And for anyone who's gigged regularly, this just makes common sense. But if you live in an area where there's an extreme hot or extreme cold and you haven't gigged out before, your guitar will change with the weather. So as soon as you get to wherever you're playing, take out your guitar and let it get to the room temperature.
Wait, Daniel, you mean you're supposed to put your guitar in a case when you
Yes.
take it places?
Yes.
I've definitely hosted and been at jam sessions where people walk off the street, it's raining outside, and they've like got their guitar on.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
it's-
use a guitar case. That's good.
Well, and again, if you're going, from, let's say you're in Buffalo, New York, and it's, 8 degrees outside, and then you go into a building and it's 67, that guitar is going to have some issues.
Massive changes,
So
yeah.
get in there early, getting it tuned up,
Yeah.
going back 5 minutes later, retuning it, just
Totally.
knowing, and having, with my industry experience, having so many clienteles that are professional touring musicians, when someone's playing an amphitheater, those guitars are the first thing that come out.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they're out the entire day. I remember being with my good buddy Renee, who's John Mayer's guitar tech. And from about 9:45, those guitars are in the boat.
AM.
And they're out
Wow, that's
all day.
amazing. Yeah.
And he just lets them sit. And then around lunchtime, does some tweaks, sets them up. When it starts getting hotter and hotter, 3, 4, he has to do it again.
Wow.
So it is extreme. So just one of those things where you got to make sure, maybe bring a truss rod wrench.
Yep.
Always bring an extra set of strings,
Always.
extra picks, and always an extra cable.
Totally.
And a capo, just in case there's a key change that you might not be familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're like the supporting acoustic guitar player or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Wise idea.
Right on.
Yeah. So communicating songs to the band.
Well, I would say communicating with the band, period.
Yeah.
Because a lot of guitar players like to get in the zone. They may close their eyes and just get into it. And that's okay for a moment.
Yeah.
But when you're doing either changing from section A to section B, or a key change or a tempo change or anything that a band would know because you're in sync, but you're not a band. You're a group of people that have come together impromptu, and it's
Totally.
follow the leader. And so if you are the leader, you've got to convey that. And if you're not the leader, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to whoever that leader is.
Yeah. Getting lost in the music is amazing, but getting lost in the music and not paying attention to the rest of the band is a train wreck waiting to happen.
Yeah, if you miss that turnaround, that's going to be rough.
Yeah.
And they're not going to let you forget that anytime soon.
Eyes open, look around, pay
Yeah.
attention to the band. I mean, I play with professional musicians who I catch them with their eyes closed all the time at very particular moments where things are supposed to be happening and they're not happening, and half of the band's just sitting there looking at them like,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times. It's like, if I could train some of my bandmates
Yeah.
from now,
Sure.
look up, eyes wide.
Yeah.
Communicate with everybody in the band all the time, especially if you're on a pickup gig or a jam session or all this.
Yeah, and I will say this: we normally rag on drummers, but I find that drummers are the best for this.
Yeah.
The drummers that I've played with have been so good at eye contact,
Totally.
and their head is on a swivel,
Yeah.
just like that, and they're making sure everything's taken care of. Bass players, they're the worst. Next to soloing guitar players. So,
Oh, yeah.
soloing guitar players. Yeah.
Yeah, which we need to talk about, right? So
Yes.
whether you're a guitar player or other instrumentalist and you're checking out this podcast, which, by the way, make sure you subscribe to this either on YouTube or your favorite podcast
Absolutely.
application.
For every like, we save a kitten.
We do.
Yeah.
2 kittens today.
Yes, indeed.
But basically, if you are the soloist, you really got to pay attention to making sure you aren't playing too loud or too long.
Yep.
These are really important considerations, and I think that the rest of the band will really help you set this up. Like, you connect with the drummer and the rest of the band. Do not stand right on top of your amp if you can help it.
Right.
Have a little space. A lot of people like to use amp stands. I will burn every one I see forever and ever.
Yeah, I hate amp stands.
They're terrible. We're going to have that and whole episode about burning amp stands. But stand a little bit in front of your amp. This is also when you're an audience member, pay attention. Who's too loud? Who's too quiet? Mm-hmm. Is the guitar amp or whatever amplifier that's amplifying you, is it loud enough? Do you need to turn it up when you walk on stage?
Right.
But either way, the most important part is being respectful to the band. Mm-hmm. Usually the hosts are going to be reasonable people. That's why they're there and they're in that position of power, so to speak. And you can say, as you sound check, you can say, hey, are you guys cool with this volume?
Yep.
Does this sound good to you? Step on your solo boost. Mm-hmm. Is this cool? Does that work for you guys?
Right.
And then what I've experienced, especially in the jazz realm when you're soloing, and this works very well in the blues as well. The first soloist, if it's not you, you pay attention to how long they solo.
Yep.
2 choruses, that means you take 2 choruses. 3 choruses, take 3. Mm-hmm. Please do not take, especially the band leader, do not take 3 times the length of the solo. Mm-mm. Unless you're looking at them, again, eyes open, and you're watching, and they're like, go, go.
Right.
And they're just loving it.
Yeah, it's very much like surfing. If you hit that wave and everything's going.
And everybody's with you, drummers.
Then keep that momentum.
Yeah.
Do it. Get it. But I always like to leave people wanting more rather than when's he gonna wrap this up?
Yeah, nobody wants that prima donna rock star person up there just wailing
right. This isn't Freebird, where we've got this ridiculous 3 guitar, extremely long outro.
Unless the band leader instigates
right,
that.
Unless Freebird is the song that's next on the list, And then, even then, you were like, are we really doing this? And he's like, yep.
And then, Jimmy Jam's in the back, and he's putting the faders up, and everything's...
Yeah, and that's how you know that your open mic or jam session was sponsored by Screwball, Some kind of cinnamon liqueur or something, so...
That's amazing. I mean, I think that pretty much covers it, man. I mean, hopefully that was helpful for those of you who are going to jam sessions because, we both agree it's such a great thing to get you to that next level. There's nothing like implementing the things you've been working on in the practice room.
Right. And I will also say this, and I used to tell this to my students, and I used to live this. It's okay to blow it.
Yeah, totally. Do not beat yourself up.
And you have beaten yourself up. I've beaten myself up. I remember driving home. I remember we started off it was a Sunday night. We did a couple tunes, and then this horn player came up, and he wanted to do some Miles Davis. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do this. So, we did I think 2 Davis tunes, and I sucked so bad. It was so bad. I was so bad because he was so good,
Yep.
And I was like,
right. It makes you feel
the entire way home. I mean, there's nothing worse than it's 1:15 on a Sunday or Monday morning at this point, uh-huh. You've got your gear in the back and you're like, oh,
should I throw it out the car?
Exactly. But use any good experience as a stepping stone and use any negative as, okay, what happened? What was the breakdown? What could have made me better? And then write it down and make sure that it doesn't ever happen that bad again.
Exactly.
Because you will have bad shows again.
Totally.
Or a bad tune.
Yeah.
But again, this is the time where you really get to crystallize your work ethic, your process, and your results, and what people can expect from you.
Yeah, and you're totally allowed to weep. Just weep and weep on your way home. You got to get that out so that you can do the planning after that.
Yep, and I will say this wasn't available because I'm a billion years old, but now with cell phones, please record yourself.
You got to record yourself, and you just don't put your phone on your amp. Put your phone towards the front of the stage or near the mains, or if there is a sound person, and it'd probably be better to put it back there with them so that you can hear what you actually sound like in the mix. Are you that person that's playing way too loud?
Right.
Are you too quiet? Is your tone too dark?
Right.
Are you playing notes that you wanted to play.
Exactly. So I think it's a matter of holding yourself accountable by having that mirror image going, okay, I thought I sounded like this, but clearly I don't.
Yeah.
And again, going back to what we talked about in the first podcast,
Which you should check out if you haven't.
Totally go back and check that out. Knowing what you sound like versus thinking you know what you sound like.
We as human beings don't have enough mental bandwidth to hear what we sound like when we're playing.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
Absolutely. Well, that's our time. We're kind of trying to keep these short. We know you got things to do.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
But we appreciate you checking out. If you haven't, again, liked and subscribed, do that. Hey, if you have an interesting story about a jam, open mic jam or a blues jam or anything, funny, sad, humorous, anything, put it in there and we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys.
All right, everybody. Take care. See you later.
Take care. Bye.